Coming up, is this heaven? No, it's Locked On Now MLB.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now MLB, local experts weighing in on the biggest stories in baseball. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. We've got all of our hosts here from the MLB teams ready to recap the action for you from yesterday, but we are going to start out with the Cubs and the Reds playing in the cornfields of Iowa in last night's biggest game.
The biggest game.
The Cubs and the Reds traveled to Iowa to play at the Field of Dreams on Thursday night, and the Cubs' 3 runs in the first inning proved good enough to beat the Reds. Locked On Cubs and Locked On Reds go over a fun night for baseball.
Cubs win the Field of Dreams game over the Reds 4-2. Fun game, fun atmosphere, fun broadcast. I enjoyed it actually more than I thought I would. It did feel like a special game, a different game. As far as the game goes, Cubs basically won this game in the first inning. It was 3 2-out runs off Nick Lodolo with nobody on. That really was enough to win the game. Not much happened after that. Cubs held on, 4-2 win. Standouts, Madrigal, 3 hits. Drew Smyly was terrific once again. Really surprised nobody decided to trade for him at the deadline. Seems like he could help a lot of teams. And then Brandon Hughes really pitched out of a jam in the 7th inning, bailed out Michael Rucker, and I think that was pretty much the difference in the ball game. Cubs win 4-2. They've won 5 out of 7. They'll have a rare off day tomorrow on a Friday, and then they will go to the Great American Ballpark this weekend.
On a night made for dreams, the umpire turned it into a nightmare for the Reds. Hey, this is Jeff Carr from the Locked On Reds podcast, and you're probably wondering, Jeff, what are you even talking about? The game wasn't that bad as far as the umpires go, but there was one call in the first inning that I didn't see a lot of people complain about, but this just drove me nuts. The Reds got 2 quick outs. Nick Lodolo looked like he was about to cruise through the first 3 outs of the game, and then with 2 strikes on Patrick Wisdom, he delivered a beautiful slider that broke toward Patrick Wisdom's back foot. In fact, so much so, it hit Patrick Wisdom in the back foot. But if you watch that replay, Wisdom tries to check his swing, but he doesn't. He comes through. He breaks the plane. His wrists even break forward a little bit. But the first base umpire says that he doesn't, that he held up. And so he awards him first. Then Seiya Suzuki gets an RBI double. The Cubs score 2 more runs, and the game is completely different from then on out. Nick Lodolo scrambles for the rest of his start, and although it wasn't his best, I still was very impressed with how he scrambled and how he was able to deliver, not having his best stuff and not having a feel and the kind of command that we're used to. The Reds hitting with runners in scoring position was awful. That's something that has to improve the rest of the way, or else they're going to continue this streak of terrible scoring. But for me, the game changed in the top of the first inning with that bad call. We're going to talk about that and more on tomorrow's Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure you join Steve and I.
The Orioles visited Boston for one game before heading to Tampa today, and the Red Sox picked up a 1-run win. Despite the defeat, Locked On Orioles is just happy Baltimore still sits above Boston in the standings for once.
Well, we just watched a baseball game in which a bad team beat a good team. And usually over the last couple of years when the Orioles have been involved in those, they've been the bad team beating the good team. But it seems like it was the bad team, the Red Sox, that beat the good team in the Orioles tonight. And really just kind of a weird game. I mean, Dean Kramer was getting killed early by this Red Sox offense. They got 3 early runs. Then Dean settled in. The Orioles came back. Terrin Vavra with his first career triple. Made it a 1-run game. Austin Hayes tied it. And then Nick Vespi just makes one really bad pitch to Eric Hosmer. And that ends up being the difference in a 4-3 Red Sox victory. Orioles couldn't rally. And really the offense was fairly quiet. They had their 1 big inning, but that was about it. And just a weird 1-game trip to Boston against a struggling team. You lose a 1-run game. Just weird vibes in this one, but the Orioles turn it around and head to the biggest series of the year in Tampa this weekend. But before that, I'll recap all the action on Friday's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
The Astros' win over the Texas Rangers on Thursday gave Houston the best record in the American League after a months long pursuit of the New York Yankees. Our Locked On Astros host has the story of how Houston became tops in the league.
Your Houston Astros can say for one night that they are the best in the AL. For real, because they have a better record by a half game than the New York Yankees. That's right, folks. After beating the Rangers 7-3, Framber Valdez pitched 7 shutout innings, and he got some help from his friends. Martin Maldonado, you know that catcher that can't hit. He had a 3-run homer, and Alex Bregman hit a solo home run and drove in 2 more runs later on. The Astros would go on to score 7 runs, and then I know the bullpen gave up 3 runs later, but overall, it was a great game for the Houston Astros. Dusty Baker came back to the clubhouse and had a little bit to say about the lineup choices he's been making. So check it out on the latest edition of the Locked On Astros podcast. Check us out.
Coming up, the Diamondbacks storm back to beat the Pirates, and the White Sox bullpen lets Chicago down against Kansas City. This is Locked On Now, MLB. Today's edition of Locked On Now is brought to you by BetOnline, the #1 spot for all of your online gambling needs. The second half of Major League Baseball underway now, and of course, the NFL is right around the corner, as well as college football. So head over to betonline.net. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Welcome back to Locked On Now MLB. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. The Diamonds beat the Pirates as we continue our look around the league.
Let's go around the league.
The Diamondbacks were looking at a loss yesterday until they scored 7 runs in the 7th inning against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Locked On Diamondbacks tells you about the offensive explosion for Arizona.
It looked like the D-backs were going to lose, but instead, they pull up their big boy pants and they come storming back in the 7th to win the series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks here. Merrill Kelly has been on a hot stretch recently, but not his best start against the Pirates. He struggled a little bit. 5 innings, 3 earned runs, 3 walks allowed, 6 strikeouts. Not a bad start at all, and it's not like he got great defensive help behind him either. And for the D-backs, it felt like the Pirates were in control most of this game until the 7th inning. That is when the D-backs seemed to just flip a switch and go after the Pirates bullpen. Newcomer Emmanuel Rivera had a huge game, double, a home run as well, 3 hits in this one. Dalton Varsho was just inches away from a grand slam, would have been a grand slam in 27 of 29 ballparks. But nonetheless, D-backs come storming back. Great comeback victory. And since the All-Star break, the D-backs are playing above 500 baseball and are looking pretty good right now.
Both Zach Greinke and Dylan Cease pitched well for the Royals and the White Sox and kept things close until the late innings, but Chicago's bullpen ended up letting the game get away from them at the end. Locked On White Sox recaps the loss in Kansas City.
The Chicago White Sox lost to the Kansas City Royals 5-3 Thursday afternoon. The Sox lost 3 of 4 in the series, and the White Sox are now 7-8 against the Kansas City Royals this season. It was an absolutely embarrassing effort, and true to form, Sox offense, anemic, lifeless, giving 0 run support to a stellar Dylan Cease, who went 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, another magnificent performance. White Sox are back to 500, 3.5 games back in the AL Central, and come home to the South Side to face the last place Detroit Tigers.
That's all for today on Locked On Now MLB. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you go check out Locked On MLB and your team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Now.